Welcome back to The Lesson Lab, the show that equips teachers with time-saving grading strategies and meaningful lessons that create a lasting impact on teachers and students. We scaffold these lessons every week and we run each assignment through the gauntlet and reflection. The gauntlet is a 5-question checklist that ensures we're creating impactful lessons and saving time when grading. The 5 gauntlet questions are: why is this assignment important? What are the goals, both long-term and short-term? How does it save the teacher time when grading? How fun is it? And how long should each assignment be? What's the timeline? The assignments we are running through the gauntlet today are the high fives, or the rubric we use to grade presentations, and the speech outline, which is used to create speeches. So for the high fives, which is our rubric, and that is how I will refer to it, it is important because this is what I use to grade the students with, and they are also able to use the rubric to grade themselves. It is very important to know how you're being scored. Even as adults, we want to know, okay, how am I going to get my raise? How do I move on to the next promotion, right? Knowing how we're scored, very important. So kids need to know this as well. And the presentations are the major grades in this communications class. So the high fives are what we use to score every presentation. The goal for the high fives is for the kids to be able to identify the high fives in the good presentation, but also be able to use the high fives to self-assess their own presentations, both in the short term and in the long term, if they go on to do more speeches and presentations outside of just my communication class. How does it save the teacher time grading? When I assess if they know how to do or identify the high fives or not, it is in a discussion post. That is something that is more of a glance at kind of grade. Am I reading every single thing that they wrote? Not exactly, but we're also having a class discussion about what they have written down, the things that they have identified. So it saves the teacher time grading because we don't have to actually go through and comb through every single piece of information that they've written down. The class discussion actually helps to limit the time that we need to spend grading this. How is it fun? Well, being able to use the high fives and watch relevant videos and assess them helps to create more fun. With the rubric, they are able to assess themselves and their friends, and we want to try to bring as much grouping and sharing and creating as we can, or as I can, to the classroom. So they can take this and grade any speech. I could say, hey, go watch your favorite movie and find a monologue and grade it. Use the rubric and then tell why you graded it, what you did. I find that kids can sometimes be the hardest graders, harder than even us adults, us teachers. And then how long should the assignment be? So just introducing the high five so that I know if they know how to use it, that's like half a class. With me introduce it, going over each category like I'm about to do, and then having them use it. If you wanted to extend the learning for this, you could always give them some videos to watch, have them assess on their own, even have them grade other people as far as like people in their family, a brother or sister or somebody like that. That's one way that you can extend the learning. You can actually print out rubrics if you wanted to. This could be, I put everything electronically on our learning management system, so I don't ever really have anything printed, but this is something that could be, say, taped to a desk, And every time we do something where there's presentations, they could grade people using, if these things are laminated, then they could use dry erase markers and then have to give some feedback on how to better assess the kids that have presented. So the actual assignment is I give them a document that have all the high fives on it. So we're going to start with eye contact. Allows the speaker to connect and engage with their audience. It monitors feedback. So if everybody's falling asleep during your presentation, you know you lost them. Eye contact also helps to establish trust when you have that sincere look on your face. It makes the speaker appear confident and trustworthy. The next part of the high fives is volume, which this can be difficult because you have some people who are really soft-spoken, and then you have some people who are really loud automatically. So helping them to learn how to use their volume to their advantage is definitely something that I have to be mindful of as I teach the high fives and as I talk to students and assess their presentations. So if you're in a room that's really big and you don't have a sound system, then of course you're going to need to use more volume. And that takes practice, especially if you don't normally talk loud. And even if you do, there is a different there's a different technique. We're not just talking loud in a regular conversation, but I'm trying to fill the room with my voice. So teaching those things are very important. After volume, we look at body language. Now, this pertains to your stance, using the space that you've been given to present. This also includes your facial expressions, the way that you use your hands. All of the things that are not speaking will be considered body language. So it's important to teach the kids to be mindful because your body language can send some nonverbal messages that you may not be aware of. So when you get nervous, I always teach my kids to use their hands to do something, right? Either clasp them, use them to talk. You know, you got to wave them around. I think that helps to get out some of that nervousness. And if you've got a podium, you can just hold on to that thing for dear life. It'll help you to not shake and almost pass out. So number 4 of our fives is communication clarity. So I usually describe this as how fast or how slow you speak. So if you want to create emphasis that is more fast paced, that is a little more frantic, I think of it like a winding road, a lot of twists and turns. So you got to kind of have your head on the swivel and you're moving with the cadence of the person presenting, or you can slow it down and have them hang on every word, like looking over a cliff. You just wait, and you use those pauses in order to keep your audience engaged and waiting for what's going to happen next. So using how fast or how slow you speak to create anticipation, to create this kind of flow that helps people to stay engaged, very, very important. And I find that a lot of people just start to speak really fast when they get nervous. So being mindful of just slowing down. The more familiar you are with the material, the more you can manipulate pace because you know what's coming up next and they don't. So it is very important that you know your material. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about the outline. When you slow down, it helps to use less filler words too. The last 5 of the high fives is personality. Be true to yourself. Whoever you are, bring that with you on stage. Very difficult to, try to present like someone else, unless you're a mime or mimic. It's very important that bring all your quirks and stuff with you because that's when you're going to do your best, because it's when you feel most comfortable, when you're being yourself and not trying to hide, I would say. So I encourage all my students to be true to yourself. Your personality is what brings your speech to life. Have on this document a list of physical behaviors that align with each high five so that when students are planning out what they want to say, they could also write something like project your voice on a specific part. They can also write something like stand tall, use a gesture where you open your arms like a door. So they can write very specific movements or very specific things they want to do with their voice or their facial expressions or their eyes in order to have it align and enhance their speech. So you can get this document on the Teachers Pay Teachers website and just search Tony Rambles. That link will also be in the description. So the other assignment that we have to run through the gauntlet today before we get out of here is the speech outline. These two assignments go hand in hand because I preach to my students practice and preparation constantly. And so the high fives I will consider the practice, and the preparation is 100% the speech outline. So this is important because how can you give a speech that is fully prepared and ready to go if you have not created it to be so? Number two, the goal is to be able to prepare a speech no matter what class, no matter what situation. Can you prepare a presentation that is good? Number three, how does it save the teacher time grading? Well, I think this is a long play here because if you have students that have used the outline and there are 3 columns to it and it is pretty in depth, then it will help your students be better presenters in the preparation phase. Again, this one is kind of a glance at it. I will put it in the middle. It's definitely not a participation grade, but you don't necessarily have to go through everything that they've written down on this in order for them to be successful. This is as they put it together, you're in the power stance, you're in the power, what are those called? The power zones. There we go. And you kind of know what their speech is going to be about because you are almost helping them craft it as you walk around the room, as you ask questions. So this is more in the glance at it category right there in the middle. How is it fun? This is the part where kids can really get, not just kids, but students can really get creative and create a presentation that is relevant, that is fun, depending on the project that we're doing. They can really craft something that's really good and be meticulous about what they want to do and where they want to place their attention getters and where they want to make their volume really fast or really slow. They can, if they choose to be this great, they can really start to have some fun here putting their presentation together. And I'll talk about that as I go through the outline. How long should this assignment be? So I would pair this with our high fives and make it the second part of the day, but I would also give them another day or so to create it. I think the more time you give, you could kind of fall into that, at least for high schoolers, that point where they feel like they have so much time that they waste more of it than they should. So I would say this should be the second half of that first day that I introduced the high fives, and then maybe one more day for them to finish it. Now, depending on the project, they may have more time, but with something that is like an opening presentation, this wouldn't be too much longer than that. This would count as the first checkpoint. Have you created your outline? Have you filled up the 2 columns? And from there, now we start to look at putting together a PowerPoint or Prezi or Canva, whatever they use to create presentations. So that should only take a day, day and a half. You can print this out. You can do sentence stems on here to try to accommodate. You could dial this back a tick if you need to modify it for students who have modifications. There's definitely some room for a teacher to be able to scale this back or scale it up. So it can take longer or shorter, depending on what you want to do. So the speech outline is sorted into 3 columns. The left column is all of the directions. So it starts with an attention getter, which is always, 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 always first, even before somebody's name. I'm saying get people's attention because they don't care who you are yet. So just telling them your name, so what? Get their attention first and then introduce yourself. And then you want to link that attention getter to your thesis or whatever you're going to talk about. From there, it starts to look a lot like a paper that a kid would write in an English class or a student would write in an English class, where you have a transition statement, how you get from your introduction or your thesis into your first main point. So I also have in this middle column, an example. So using statements like in addition to, on the other hand, because of this, next, right? We have these other sentence phrases that kids are able to use when they're transitioning from one part to the next. From there, you get into the main points and your supporting statements. So whatever that main point is, your first big fact, your first central idea that you want to get into, that's where that would start. And then, of course, you have 2 or 3 supporting statements that help you work through your reasoning. In most presentations, you're going to have at least 2 points, depending on how long you have, the time. Then you may have 3. But for every main point, you want to have 2 or 3 supporting statements. Now, when we're talking about this outline, I want them to write this how they would say it. Because writing everything out in complete sentences doesn't necessarily give us the same effect, because we don't always talk in complete sentences. There are like kind of half phrases sometimes. There are like parts where you even cut yourself off because it makes sense with speaking, but not necessarily in writing. So that's something that would be up to the teacher, where you go write everything in complete sentences like a novel, or you can just, write it how you would say it, but make sure you have all of your points. And then at the end, we talk about our conclusion, which is you first have to have a signpost where you go, as a result, or in conclusion, in closing. All of these things point to this being the end of the presentation. From there, you want to restate your thesis, and then you want to give a lasting impression, which is basically an attention getter for the end. You want to give them something memorable to think about once you have finished. And so the middle column is empty for the students to be able to write their answers for each section. And then the column all the way to the right is where students are able to list those physical behaviors that they have gotten possibly from the high fives form. At least that's where some examples are. So you can really start to craft what you want to say, and then the body language or pace that's going to go with those things. So I'm really trying to help them to think about every piece of their presentation before they get to it. So as they are writing out all of it, think about what you're actually going to do with your body as well, because that's also a part of presenting, not just the words. So the last part of our outline are the keywords. Now, I want students to highlight specific words or phrases from each section of their presentation that will help them stay on track for the presentation without reading directly from the presentation word from word. That is something that will just tank a presentation, because if you're reading word for word, your body language isn't going to be there because you're facing the board or you have your head down in some paper. So it's very important for them to know these key words because it helps them to stay on track. And that is the last thing that they're going to do with their outline. And that's something that they could just go through and highlight. You don't have to rewrite those in any space unless a student chose to do that. But you can just go in and highlight in your main points, highlight your signposts, highlight your attention getter, and then those words and those physical actions will go with that at the end. Before we get out of here, remember, you can get these resources from this episode and others on the Teachers Pay Teachers website. Just search Tony Rambles. I also run a Facebook group filled with fun, supportive teachers called Teacher Triumphs, where we help teachers through classroom burnout. We can keep the conversation going there, and you can also post assignment ideas and other things that you do to help other teachers. Links will be in the description. Until next time, keep teaching, keep learning, and I will see you all on the next one.